starting the podcast. Yeah, they called 911 on him. The excavators did, because they showed up and saw wood smoke smoke everywhere, and they thought something was on fire, and it was him cutting torch and stuff, but then like hay and cow shit and all kinds of stuff caught on fire. I told him to get it out, which he did, but you have to really scrub that stuff out. Well, I show up and it's still smoldering a little bit, so I had to use my boots and spray tank and get it out. But now I smell like an old campfire, a wet, soggy campfire. All right. So I was just chatting with Aiden here, who gets our podcast stuff rolling. Busy day here in the shop. So I thought I would do a solo podcast here, just kind of as a little update as to what we have been up to lately. There's been a lot going on. There's a lot of plans happening within the business, a lot of movement, development. So just a lot of things happening, and I've been on the road a lot. So figured we would jump in here and have a little conversation. You might see that I'm dressed a little fancier than normal for a podcast. We have an employee downstairs named Mac. He's this big, tall, athletic, giant dude, but he's a super cool employee, and he'll come up with ideas and whatnot. And so in the last few weeks, he's called out Fancy Fulfillment Friday. It's Friday as I sit here. We just had our mini war goat drop last night. And he called out Fancy Fulfillment Friday yesterday, and so these guys did it last week, and they show up in their suits and ties and whatnot, and they're all dressed fancy, dressed for success, basically. So I figured I'll participate along with them. It's a cool little, just ways to make it fun in the shop. So this morning I came in a sport jacket and a cowboy hat and fancy boots, but I had to head to a health department meeting, and I thought I was maybe a little overdressed for that. Plus I had to stop at the job site where we are working on our building project, and I thought I was definitely overdressed to go talk about dirt grading there. And as it turns out, I ended up having to put out a little bit of fire, and so my boots smell like absolute hell right now, and so it's filling up this room with smell. But anyway, I digress. This has been quite a year so far. We are at the halfway point, and I figured let's have a little halfway update. We are still learning a ton as a brand. We're going through some growing pains. We're just learning a lot. But it's also at the same time absolutely incredible. We are right around 98% ahead of our revenue growth from last year, which is absolutely incredible. So we're probably a month away from meeting last year's total financial output this year. So, which is on plan for what we thought we could do. But you set a plan, you set all these things out, and you have to lay out your supply chain, your drops for the year. A lot of this stuff is so much more complicated than I ever imagined it would be, especially when I started this just making a couple hundred knives in my shop. And I think that's what should be really super motivating and hopefully give you guys hope if you're thinking about starting your own businesses or launching your own company, is you don't have to actually know shit about how to do it. You just have to figure it out every single day and solve the problems, put out the fires, literally today. I didn't plan that one. That was a good little, that was a good one. I'm impressing myself over here, Aiden. But anyway, the point is here, when I started making these knives for MKC in 2020 and into 2021, I was doing everything wrong. It wasn't scalable. I had no idea where to source things or how to get parts made, where to get parts made. I knew nobody in the industry. I only knew custom knife makers, and they didn't know anything about what we're trying to do. Here we find ourselves about 5 years later, and we're still learning an unbelievable amount. And today, what we're trying to do is learn a little bit how to lead, how to organize our leadership below us, to make sure we're staying productive, but we're also keeping a really good culture in the shop. We really do try to invest in our employees and do some good things. We have some great employees in the shop that help us with that. Like tonight, Tori, our customer service guy, organized a little deal where we have like a VIP deck at a local, I guess you'd call it like AA or single A baseball team. It's like an affiliate to maybe the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm not even sure. But it's just a team gathering thing. A couple weeks ago, we had a a team get together at a brewery where we just watch the drop. We just called it a drop celebration party. But we still, even as we grow, are trying to keep that culture alive in the building. But within that too, we are learning, basically we're starting a brand new business called the folding knife business. Everybody asks us when we're going to make a folder, and the answer is we are now, but we're not. We're trying to figure it out. And so we are building this process from the very start. The first thing you have to do is design a product. You have to design a knife, right? And that knife has to work, and it has to be functional, durable, aesthetically pleasing to the eye, all the things. But then you have to make all the parts. And this is where manufacturing in America gets very, very difficult. And we are trying to build that manufacturing process within our shop, especially that's really the main reason for this new building is to grow into that folding knife business. But we don't own any of those machines for that process, really. We've never done a lot of these different parts and pieces of the business as far as it comes to scaling. And so we are, and I wish I could share more. I wish you guys could actually sit in on the meetings and just see how much of a puzzle this is. You even have to design the piece to make it scalable. You can put all these fancy little features in and whatnot, and then you go to try to make 1,000 or 10,000 or someday 1,000,000. How are you going to do that, right? And we have to watch our costs into the project, because once we go to charge you for the knife, it has to be at a price that's somewhat reasonable for you guys to be able to spend on it to buy it. It can't be so expensive that no one wants to carry it in their pocket, and it's just totally a collector's item. But also, we don't want to cheapen out on things, and we refuse to source things from overseas in order to make this process easier, which is why, like, we've gone and bought a Swiss lathe machine. We set it up in our shop up at we call it 3.0. That's the building site, and there's an existing kind of machine shop, mechanic shed that was out back for the stockyard property, where they worked on their mini excavators and their dozer and backhoes and skid steers, stuff like that. So we put a Swiss lathe in there to make screws, but now we're realizing, like, all right, if we're going to meet the capacity we need 4 Swiss lathes, 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And so now it becomes a balance of like, okay, here's all this equipment we need to make the folder, but then here's how much money it's going to cost to set that equipment up. And there again, we haven't taken on the investment piece. We haven't really entertained the idea of letting somebody come in and just write us the check to supply the funds for that. And we are trying everything we can to figure out a way to continue bootstrapping that side of the business and grow it while not give up control, lose quality, but at the same time also do it in a timely manner at a production rate that we can actually have more than one drop every 3 months, right? And so these are all the puzzle pieces that we are trying to figure out. And I hear people say every now and then, MKC's getting so big, they're too big for their britches. I see Josh all over with all these famous people, and they've made it, or I got a message from a guy the other night because I didn't answer his one Instagram message a month ago. Screw you guys are too big. You can't even answer your Instagram messages. And I actually answer most of the messages that I get, or I try to react or something to most of the messages that I personally get. But I also responded back to that guy, and I'm like, I'm going to prioritize my family, my employees, and my company over social media messages first. So I'm gonna have to miss some and just go by them. But when people say those things about our company being so big and maybe not needing the support that we needed a couple years ago, it's actually quite the opposite. We need the support more than ever today, right now. The knives that we sold last night, like in that mini War Goat drop, that goes to fund the equipment to put in our building for our folding knife business. This is not a case where we are putting millions of dollars in our personal pockets. I still have a house payment, and it's funny. I was just on the Dave Ramsey, one of Dave Ramsey's podcasts, Entree Leadership, just last week, and that'll air in like July. And I was sitting there kind of thinking also I'm a bit of a fraud from like a debt standpoint, because I ran the business debt free for all these years until this building project came along. But here I still have, a house payment. So I haven't even prioritized taking enough money out to pay off my own house. But all of that is said because we are pouring everything back into this business. The cost to build today is, I'm general in the project. I built this shop that we're in now, built my first house, or general did. I've been involved in a lot of building projects, but it's pretty staggering how much the cost of building went up, even just from the standpoint from when I built this building in 2022 and moved into it in 2023, just the cost of building. And then you start looking at, like, I did this one kind of on the cheap, that building, that commercial building with the engineer costs and everything else. And granted, I tried to make it pretty nice. I want that to be something that our community is proud of when they drive into town, into work every day, and they look over and they see that building. It's pleasing to the eye, and they're proud of that company being in their community. But it's expensive. And then all the equipment, the employees and that's the other thing, the employee part, you can buy the equipment to do any of these processes. I mean, I can get online tomorrow, make a few phone calls, and order all the equipment we're ever going to need. But you have to have the expertise to actually run it. So that's the other piece, is finding the expertise, which we do not have in Montana. Try and convince these people, or even find them. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that would love to come to work for us in roles that we need filled, but they probably don't even know that this role exists. Like, where do you post that job? LinkedIn, Indeed, I don't know, but it doesn't seem to really be working at times for some of these roles. I don't know how many machinists are really watching that stuff, but you want to come be a bow hunter and a fly fisherman and go hike and raise your kids in Western Montana, and be a high-level CNC or Swiss lathe operator or grinding center operator, mass finish person, process engineer, mechanical engineer, design engineers, marketing people. Like, we have all of those types of positions that we are looking for, but we are looking for the very best talent. We're not just looking for people who have done it or have been in that career. We are taking our time to find the best of the best. And so these are some of the challenges. I just wanted to give you an update of where we're at. We are prototyping our folder. I think we're on our third or fourth prototype right now, working through not necessarily issues of how the knife works. The knife is working really, really great, but testing out some processes of how we're going to produce the knife and making sure that it's producible, repeatable results, accurate results. We provide quality, and we don't have a bunch of problems down the road. So from a product development standpoint, that's really where we're at. That's just kind of full disclosure behind the scenes. We expect to be making folder parts in our shop here in the next 8 to 10 weeks, probably. Getting ready for a folder launch next year in 2026. So that's the goal, and that's where we're trying to time that stuff up with the new building. And the new building, as far as an update goes there, it's been amazing. We are hitting that part where we're kind of slowing down, at least it looks like from the naked eye, but we're not. It's amazing how well the plumbers, the mechanical guys, the framers, everyone's working together in that building at the same time. They're right on top of each other, and they're getting a ton of work done. The siding guys are finished. They finished up the north and west sides. I was up there this morning. They were finishing up the east side, and they're going to move to the south. So that thing's going to be kind of completely sided and good to go here in just a couple weeks. Got excavators up on site digging in water lines, sewer lines. We've got linemen there right now working on power lines. We just had gas guys getting a natural gas line into it. And then we have a bunch of grading that has to happen around the building for drainage and all that kind of stuff, prepping for landscape. I'm going to go rent a mini excavator myself and dig in some power lines across the parking lot for the parking lot lights. We got to get sleeves in for irrigation and then start working towards prep of getting ready for asphalt, sidewalks, landscape, all that stuff. I ordered a giant flagpole. That's going to be cool. We're installing that the first week of August. So there's a lot of things happening on that building site, but it's going really, really great. It's looking good. And I've been targeting all along kind of December, but it's looking like we may even be in that thing or close to being in it come October, which is actually adding some stress on the business side of what I was just talking about. We were kind of framing all of our folder stuff and manufacturing around like this December, January move-in date, kind of get ramped up. February, we'll heck, this is pushing everything up, so we got to start making decisions on equipment. But all the while, we got to keep putting cash in the bank and watching our cash reserves, because it takes a lot of coal in that fire pot to make that ship steam forward, right? So the amount of cash that you have to dump into raw materials, steel, G10, the consumables of the business, all that to make the business actually steam forward. So there's this real balance of driving enough inventory and whatnot to make next year's product calendar come together, assembly, all that, while also turn around and buy capital expenses and equipment and investing in hiring people. So I hate to kind of ramble on, but I think some of you find this pretty interesting as to how you build a business, and I'm being very, very honest with you about where we're at, the struggles. Last night as I'm going to bed, Israel's bombing the hell out of Iran. And trust me, these things as a business owner, and now of a quote-unquote big business, though we're really small in the scheme of things, but we're bigger than most every business around us here, those things really do start to affect your psyche in the way that you think about, like, how much risk you want to take. Like, how much cash do you really want to lay out for materials, and you really want to lay out for equipment, or is the economy going to go to hell, and are we going to have to pull back and be really careful? And we don't want to ever risk killing such a good thing with how we're doing. But with that being said, it's something that I'm also trying to be somewhat involved and proactive in, and this is kind of the next thing I'll get into with the Trump administration and tariffs and whatnot, is it largely has no effect on us in a way. In another way, it does, because it's the economy. If you're in a recession, if you're headed towards a depression, if the U.S. dollar is being derated and there's lack of confidence and people stop spending money, then you stop selling products, right? And so there is that, and even inflationary costs of what it costs to run a business if you have inflation. And so I am seeing these things. 5 years ago, I'm just a lineman trying to figure out how to start a knife company, a 2-car garage, and now I'm thinking about this stuff. From a sourcing of material standpoint, we really don't have any effect. The one thing that is new, and that is not just affecting us, but it's going to affect everyone, Benchmade, everybody, is this steel issue. In January, Crucible Steel went bankrupt, filed for bankruptcy, went through that process, whatever that looks like. I actually even asked loosely some questions about, like, well, what's it look like to buy a steel mill? That wasn't going to happen. Sounds like they were in pretty rough shape, and that was going to be a tough business to save. But unfortunately, it went up for sale, and Aerosteel out of Europe bought it. And unfortunately, they didn't just buy it. They just bought really the IP. They bought the whole entire business, and then they just shuttered the plant. And this is kind of exactly what our government should be watching out for and should be trying to help stop if possible. And I really wish that the timing was bad on it. Trump was just being inaugurated when this happened, so that administration wasn't in place yet. If it was now, I may even be able to put a call in and be like, you guys should look at this and maybe stop it. But what happened was a foreign company bought an American company, took the IP back to their country, and shuttered the jobs in the business and the factory in America. What resulted was that was the last place. Crucible was the last place that made powdered metal. The powdered metal technology is no longer done in America, period, anywhere. So when it comes to buying knife steel, there are some knife steels that are available here in America, but they are of a much lower grade quality. And so here we sit as a business, and we're in this position where if we stay 100% American sourced, then we have to decide to use lower grade materials. Well, that doesn't sit well with me. I'm building a tool. First and foremost, I'm trying to build the best hunting knife, the best tool possible for the customer. Best performance is number one. Then the next question is like, well, how do I source materials to provide that performance? And I've been able to do that through American-made steel. And we have enough steel to bought to last us probably through the end of the year. But as we start to order steel for next year, in 2026, that steel is going to come from Sweden. Now, I don't necessarily think that most Americans care. I think most Americans really wish that steel company could still be here in America, and I actually agree with the long-term overall goal of this administration, which is to bring back, our steel industry and mining and, all the different various manufacturing industries. But to be honest, that's not going to happen overnight. I mean, they're not bringing back that technology of that steel process anytime real soon. I mean, especially if you're going to go build a brand new steel mill. Hell, it's taken me 2 years basically of process to just build this MKC facility, and it's quite simple compared to a steel mill. But at the end of the day, if our knife steel comes from Sweden or Austria, Switzerland, I don't think people really mind that much, because I think we assume quality, German engineering, right? Swedish steel, even Japanese steel, we assume some qualities with these, German-made cars, stuff like that. So I don't think it's that big a deal. We still are going to be receiving essentially these big, huge billets. Like, imagine a solid 5-gallon bucket of steel that's just been kind of melted together. But then it still is going to come to Niagara here in the United States, and it's going to get rolled out into a sheet. And let's say that sheet's the size of this table, maybe 4x6. A sheet of steel, flat. It's going to get annealed, which means softened, stress relieved, and then ground. So it's ground down nice and flat, and now it's ready to make something out of, which we're going to make knives out of it. So that's going to happen here in America. We're then going to cut those blades in America, all the heat treating, the milling, the grinding, assembly, all that stuff here in America. I think that's pretty American made, even if that steel comes from Sweden. There's other parts and pieces, to be honest, to this day, I still don't even know, like our G10, for example, that's made also on the East Coast in America. They lay up all the fiberglass and the epoxy and do everything they do there. They press it, dimension it, cut it, sand it, do all the things that they do in that process, all done here in America. But the epoxy for that stuff might come from who knows where. I don't even know if we make epoxy in America. And that's their supply chain. I'm not that deep in our supply chain to know where some of that comes from. We're making our own screws. We're actually buying American steel to do that, and American titanium. We're buying some screws from some other Swiss lathe shops across the country. I think for the most part they're sourcing American titanium. There might be some foreign titanium in there somewhere. But there again, I think the point is we are manufacturing here in America. We are turning raw goods into a product here in America. It's not just assembled. And it's not all done under this roof. And that's the point of this building is, when you start and you bootstrap from a blue collar job, let's say there's a plumber out there and he wants to start a knife company. I was a lineman, or an electrician or an excavation guy. When you go to start, you're not going to go, unless you got some trust fund, you're not going to go buy a big piece of commercial property, build a building, buy all the equipment, hire all the people, and then start making knives. You're going to do it the way I did it and the way that, Brandon and I did it, which is you're going to start with doing whatever it is you can in your own shop that makes sense, and then just start eating that apple a tiny bite at a time. And it's really not an apple. It's more like a world record sized elephant. But that's what we've been doing. So even to this day, we're not doing every process under our roof here, but we are doing those processes in this country around America. And I'm very, very proud of that. Whether we're putting people to work in Missoula, Frenchtown, Montana, or, in New Jersey or New York or Washington or Oregon, Idaho, all these different places Texas, they have contact with our supply chain. And so those are Americans. At the end of the day, it's about putting Americans to work, and that's what we've been doing. So I'm very proud of what we're doing, but we are seeing some challenges in the supply chain talks. And really none of this would have affected us at all except for this company going bankrupt, which has been interesting with the steel part of it. And I've even been talking to Laren Thomas, the metallurgist that invented that steel, and it's like, well, what options are there, and how can we get around this, or how can we make this steel in America? And the answer is right now there's no easy answer, and I don't know that there's an answer on the horizon at this point, but I'm hoping that I can have some some conversations that might be meaningful with some of the people in Congress in Washington. I was talking to Kid Rock the other day. I was down at his bar. His name's Bob. I was talking to Bob, and he told me to write him kind of a small, what do you call it? Basically what do you call those things? What do you say? Like just a little brief, I guess. But there's a name for it, and I'm blanking on it right now. But essentially just a little short brief on what it is that we're dealing with as an industry. This isn't just an MKC thing, it's an industry thing. And then how we think the government could be a little bit more nuanced in their policies and potentially help even bring back that process quicker. So that's kind of what that all looks like. It's been an interesting time. I've also been traveling quite a bit. Just was at the Atlanta Blade Show, and I have not been to the Atlanta Blade Show in 17 years. It was actually, I think, the year my son was born, 2008 was the last time I went. And it's the largest knife show in the world. It has been for decades. It's run by Blade Magazine, owned by Henry Wu. It's a cool show. There's thousands of people that attend it. Probably like close to 1,000 exhibitors of all walks of life from the knife world. And we're talking from the most hobby, maybe go to one show a year knife maker that's trying to just get started, all the way up to the largest knife factories and every custom maker and style in between. And so it's a real melting pot of styles, of people, personalities. But it's cool, and it's like a huge family. And so I had gone for probably 10 or 12 years before that. When I was a custom maker, I started going in 1996 when I passed my journeyman test, and really went every year after that until 2008. So, man, I was actually going to that for a while longer than I thought. Anyway, I hadn't been there in 17 years, and it's interesting walking in because in one way it's the same. It looks similar, set up similar, but then I walk through and the faces are totally different because I've been kind of out of that world. And I purposely didn't launch Montana Knife Company in the knife world. We sat around at every show, every knife maker I talked to, we're talking, how do we get more custom knife collectors into these shows? And how do we get more people to know what our industry does? And, this is an art form that people should know about, and it's super cool and nobody knows. And you tell someone you're a knife maker and they look at you cross-eyed and, think you're a weirdo. And that was really before Forged in Fire came along. I think that's definitely changed the landscape a bit, for good and bad. But when it came to launch Montana Knife Company, I didn't launch at a single knife show. I haven't gone to a single knife show. I haven't even attended one. And that's not on purpose. That's just, we just don't really have much around here of shows to attend. But I pushed Montana Knife Company out into industries, into places where I just thought there would be people that want to buy knives, that would buy a knife, that are the knife kind of people. And so that might be through Total Archery Challenge or through hunting expos or an off-road show and places like that. And so that's how I built this company. And Brandon and I really targeted those spaces. And we stayed out of the knife world because in the knife world, you kind of seem to be like all fighting for like the same handful of customers. And it can be a real challenge. But it was cool to go there. The reason I actually went, Rick Dunkerley, who taught me to make knives, got inducted into the Hall of Fame. He asked me to give the speech to induct him, which was a huge honor. He started teaching me when I was 11 years old. Took me all through the journeyman mastersmith process, kept learning all the way along. Little did I know when I started learning from him that he would be a future Hall of Famer because he was early in his career at that time as well. And so he just kept growing. I kept growing. The people around us kept growing. I happened to just be very fortunate to be a part of a really cool group of people. And it resulted in a Hall of Fame career for Rick, which is well-deserved. So did that. One thing I want to say that was the coolest part of the weekend, I wasn't sure how I'd be received as a former, I'm still a custom maker, but I'm just not as active with what I'm doing. But let's say former custom knife maker that's now running a production knife brand. I thought that could be maybe frowned upon by other custom makers. They're slaving away, working their butts off for 2 weeks in their shop to make one knife, right? and we're making knives by the hundreds and the thousands, right? And it was really cool as I walked around that show, how many knife makers stopped me, hollered from their table like, "Hey, Josh, come over here," and, introduced themselves and told me how inspirational what we're doing is and how much hope it gives them for their future careers. They told me how much they thought that what we're doing is expanding the eyeballs of the knife world in general, which is going to be beneficial for the entire knife world. It was just so cool to talk to these people. And some of these people, I've answered some of their questions on DMs and whatnot in my inbox. And a lot of these guys have aspirations to build kind of what we've been building here. But it was just really neat. And it shows you the character of the knife community in general. I did not, and I swear to God, I did not receive one single negative comment the entire weekend. And who knows, maybe there's people thinking things. Nobody said anything to me. And it was quite the opposite. These people went out of their way to come across the room and grab me or, holler at me from their tables I'm walking by or meet me in the bar, out smoking a cigar and people come up. The amount of people that complimented us on what we are doing was really, really cool. And I hope it's viewed that way, that we are somewhat of a gateway drug into like that custom knife world. It's like, okay, maybe you were buying $29 knives at Cabela's, but now you're buying a $300 MKC knife, and you see this kind of mix of custom and production, and you see these guys down hand sharpening and grinding away. But then maybe you get caught on to a Mareko Malmasi or a Gabe Fletcher or Josh Prince, and you see their work, and it's $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a piece or more, and you become a collector of a really fine art like that. I feel really good about that our company maybe was the bridge between, that production world and that custom knife maker. And if that can help sell a couple custom knives a year for a guy that really needs the business, I'm proud of that. So that was very cool. Went on from the Atlanta Blade Show to North Carolina, went and met up with Vrindavan Belord. She's going to be very impressed that I got that name right. Everyone calls her V. She is Tulsi Gabbard's sister. She's an amazing person. I got to talking to her at Tulsi's swearing in D.C. and ask her what she does, and she said she's trying to build homes for people in North Carolina that had homes they lost, and kind of told me a bit about her organization. And I'm like, well, this is a little bit of divine intervention, because I have $160,000 that needs to go somewhere in North Carolina to help a deserving family, but we haven't yet wrote that check because we want to make sure it gets to the ground. And learned a lot more about her organization. She's donating all of her time. All of the money is going to the ground. They're also building homes for very inexpensive amount of money, because like Lowe's is donating the building materials for it. They've got contractors that are either donating time or working on really small salaries, and they have a lot of volunteer help. So we wrote a check to her. That was enough money to buy the biggest home yet for a family of 6 that lost their home in the flood. There's video of it. It's absolutely heart-wrenching to watch. But this family is so cool, and it's such a MKC feel of a family. They hunt. You can tell they're very close. The siblings are close with each other. The dad cares a ton about his family. You can tell he's been under a ton of pressure, trying to be the protector and provider for that family. You can tell the mom's heartbroken, but she's a teacher's assistant, and he's a diesel mechanic, and they were told they make too much money to qualify for these other programs. Not only did they lose their house, but they lost the land that their house was on because the bridge washed out and the county won't rebuild it because they were the only one beyond the bridge. And their house was gone, and the county's like, well, we're not rebuilding a $500,000 bridge to a bare piece of land. So they had to find new land. They got that secured on their own, but at that point, they're tapped out. We were able to write a check, and now it's going to build them an entire home. That was that Hell or High Water fundraiser that we did with Chase Rice. I got to give a lot of credit to John from Hook and Barrel Magazine, because John made that connection between Chase and I. And this is where, man, it's a world of connections, and I might do a whole nother podcast on this at some point. But connections, just one relationship can lead to building someone a home, for example, which was very, very cool. So Chase Rice and I, David, our videographer, V and her team, and some people, some media met the family out on site, and we got to deliver the news that we were giving them a new home, which was super emotional, super powerful, very incredible. The reason for the media, the reason for the videos, and we actually kind of shot a couple videos when we were there. One of them is to just donate our time and David's skills and our video guys' skills to give them a video, like a how or a who we are or about us video that they're going to be able to use on their website to raise funds, because they've never been a public organization. They've done all of this behind the scenes, but it's hard to raise money when no one knows what you're doing. And so that's the reason for the TV cameras, the videos, the social medias. We are hopefully trying to drum up somebody out there that can provide the next home, or even if it's a couple $100 or whatever in a donation. But ideally, somebody else can do something like what we did and provide another home for another family. So that was a really cool experience. We then drove from North Carolina to Tennessee, had a cigar with Kid Rock. That's always super fun to do. He's such a good dude. And then had a couple dinners and whatnot. And then I did the Dave Ramsey Entree Leadership podcast that will be coming out in about July. It's cool because I sat in my knife shop for a lot of years as a very broke knife maker, trying to make it with credit card debt and house payments and everything else, listening to Dave talk about the debt snowball and everything that he talks about, trying to figure out how to get ahead in life someday. And so all of a sudden here I am talking about how we built this company, and we really did build it on the principles of Dave Ramsey's program, even though that wasn't necessarily like forefront in my mind. I wasn't thinking about Dave Ramsey. It was more thinking about not wanting to put my family at risk. And I'd been in enough debt at times in my life that made it difficult, that I wasn't going to do that to our family again. So we built this just a little bit at a time with the money that we had and the money that we earned. And that's frankly still how we're raising it. Other than some of the bit of debt we have with this building project, that's why we're still being calculated with how we do things. And probably could be doing it with zero debt, but then I'd have to give up ownership and control in this company. And I might have to listen to some guy come in and tell me how we need to be sourcing certain products or doing certain tasks in China or Taiwan, and I'm not willing to have that conversation. So it's easier to not have anyone else involved. It's just Brandon and I and our team. So that's the way we like it. On the personal life standpoint, I don't know that we have a lot of updates other than the fact that my wife's getting a new puppy tomorrow. I'm sure you'll see pictures on social media. My kids are just busy doing their thing. My oldest daughter is an assistant, or is a school teacher, and also going through college to try to get her teaching degree. Sadie finished her freshman year of college playing basketball, redshirt basketball season, working to be a veterinarian. She's working for a vet right now. We have a really cool video about that vet, Angela Clark, on our YouTube page. It's kind of our Working People series. And then Hank is busy working up at our property up there at 3.0, cutting down cattle panels and all that stuff. We're no longer taking cattle on that site because the people who were doing that said they weren't getting enough cattle to make it pay, so they quit doing that. And then he's working towards a basketball scholarship. He's got some offers. He's going to camps. He'll be a junior in high school next year, so that's cool. And then Macy, my little girl, 15, going to be a sophomore, crushing it. She's super athletic little girl. Went to state in 3 events, podiumed in 1, just an all-around good kid, and she's doing the high school life thing. So everything's all good on our end. It's a very exciting time. It's a grind for sure. It's hard to express how much of a grind it is at the moment because of this building project and all the planning. And it's really hard to plan for something that you've never done before. So it's an experience. It'd be like saying, you're going to go walk across Asia, but you've never been to Asia, and you don't know what it looks like, and you don't know what the weather's like, and you don't know what the people are like, and you don't know what there is for food or where the stops are. But you got to figure it out. And so that's what we're doing right now. We're in figured out mode. It's exciting. I can't express how much appreciation I have for our employees while I'm upstairs most of the time grinding on this building and doing what I'm trying to do for the future. They're keeping the present going. We're absolutely killing it. It's an exciting time. Summer's coming, and that's a first half of the year update. So feel free to email questions, DM questions, comment on our videos and whatnot, and we'll try to answer them here if we do another solo episode. So thanks a lot, guys.